Anywho,
Yeah, good.
it is 9 o'clock. Thank you, Bruce, for remembering to record. I've made Bruce the host today. So, um, anyway, thanks you guys for joining us. Hopefully, we'll have a few others that jump on here as we go. Today, we are going to be talking about teams, kind of all different teams and different types of team structures. But before we get into that, Aaron with Success Lending, Aaron, you got some updates for us or give us a kind of what's happening in the mortgage world?
Yeah, well, obviously, let me make sure yeah, okay, I'm not muted. One of the Feds are meeting this week, obviously. They met yesterday and today. One thing that's I've started to notice that's happened as of late, the market is really kind of dictating things, and it's not even so much the people, or I should say benchmarks that we're used to seeing stuff happen. So what I mean by that is there's been so much talk about interest rates being lower and so many smaller, um, I should say, needle movers, in the market, that the market was already starting to trend that way, with the lower interest rates. And we all started to see that happening. And a lot of times the market updates itself even before like the Feds make their interest rate adjustment, because everyone knew that they were going to lower it. So a lot of people lowered their interest rates right away, because that's where I got a little confused um, initially on it, because I heard some crazy interest rates out there right off the bat, a couple of weeks ago, that somehow all of a sudden, even like 2, 3 weeks ago, people were already in the fives and we weren't there yet. And I had to make some phone calls to some other places that I've worked at and some banks. And it was just depending on who you knew. What did it happen the day of, or did it happen like 2 or 3 weeks later? Did it happen a day later? So there's a lot. It's always important to have multiple people, no matter how astute you think your guy or gal or person, whatever you want to go with, is, that you just fact check everybody. It's always a good idea, and that's not something you can take, on an individual basis, personal or anything like that. It's just important that, when it comes to, quite frankly, the biggest financial decision people can make, and a 30-year commitment, more than likely, to, have more than one person. That's just life. And what I want to do today is just kind of do a quick update on the mortgages. I haven't had a whole lot of increase or decrease in my applications over the last handful of days, or weeks for that matter. But I would say September and August have been pretty steady, with a slight increase each week and seeing a little bit more chatter on it. Right now, we are at the exact same interest rates as we were last week, which is 5.99 on the 30-year fixed. We can do something a little bit lower, but now you're talking like a 35 point, basis point buy down. So on a $300,000 mortgage, it would cost you $100,000 just to get an eighth lower. So in my math, I don't know if that, makes sense, but it depends on the loan size. That said, FHA and VA, are about 0.3% lower. So they're pushing that 5.5 range. But just keep an eye on it. There might be some more adjustments depending on who your favorite broker or lender is over the next week here or so. A lot of places wait for the rate drop, or for the Feds to actually physically come out and drop the interest rates. Other banks, took advantage of it and kind of, got went to the first Christmas sale in October. They didn't wait till, mid-December to buy the Christmas gift. So that's how I would describe it. If anybody has any questions or any random scenarios they've run into, whether we're working together or not, feel free to reach out to me via email or cell phone, and I'll be sure to help answer any questions, just as a neutral party and a resource for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. I do agree that sometimes we do see reactions before the actual announcements officially, right? So we may see something additional, we may not, right? So just hang in there, but hopefully good news, right?
100%. Keep moving
Yeah.
the ball forward.
So thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk teams. Who on here is on a team?
I am.
I am. Yay. Good. So most of us are. Um, Lisa, you're a team member on Bob's team, right?
Yep.
Okay. So can you share why you wanted to be on a team versus being an individual agent out there?
I like the support and the collaboration.
Okay. Okay. And are you a buyer's agent? Are you a listing agent? Do you do both? Tell
I
us a
do
little bit
both.
about like your what your job description is.
Yep, I do both.
Okay. Okay. So there are obviously there's lots of different people out there, right? There's the people that just want to be their own individual agents. There's people like Lisa that wants to be part of a group that provides some additional, resources, support, collaborative elements, right? There are people like Bruce and I who are married, and he thought he was going to retire, and I said no dice. So he got his real estate license, and then we became a team.
Nice.
And I mean,
How do
so
you feel
there's
about that decision, Bruce?
It's the best thing I've ever done in the last
yeah,
15, 18
you're like,
years.
I'm surprised you said that because I'm not even in the
Right
same boat
answer.
right now. Yeah.
Right
Uh-huh.
answer.
Well, yeah, but it's recorded, so
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah. Well, and obviously, when you think of real estate, most people get their license and they start their career, right? Or, their job as a real estate agent, doing the day to day. You don't just wake up, get your license, and say, I'm going to have a team. Okay. So we start out, we figure it out, and we get to a point where we can't do what is needed for us to do, right? We've either gotten so busy, our production levels have risen high enough where now we need to uh, get some help, right? So the whole point of a team is leveraging yourself or leveraging your business through people, right? We can have tons of great technology, programs, apps, whatever, which it does help and that helps leverage us. But at some point in time, the main reason that someone starts a team is because they just can't do it all, right? They can't be in two places at once and they need more leverage through people. So that's the main thing. Now the question is how do you know when is the right time? So Bob, when you guys started, how did you know like, hey, we're building a team, we gotta add leverage?
yeah, we realized that when we basically hit that production ceiling where we just could not do any more production and we were just tapped out, meaning that you know, we didn't want to work 80 hours a week selling houses. Because at that point in time, we were very much like you and Bruce. We were doing our own transaction coordination at the time because transaction coordination outsourcer showings, writing offers, doing listing appointments, and then doing the paperwork on the back end of it all. And, so our first hire was, which was a mistake, our first hire was a buyer's agent. And, because we had enough leads, enough business that we could outsource that to the buyer's agent, but not correctly thinking it through. Once the buyer's agent was doing work, we were still doing the processing of the files, etc. So we really should have hired an assistant first, which would have
Mhm,
freed up some time for Jennifer and I. We probably could have did more production ourselves. So that was
mhm,
one of the early lessons we learned in starting a team. So we basically did retool about 2 years into our partnership that we brought on an assistant, and then we basically got to the point where we were generating too many leads for us to keep up with. They were falling through the cracks. So we hired an agent to follow up with those leads, and then it just kind of blossomed from there. As we can, because the only way that we felt we could do more production was to leverage it through people, and
mhm.
and that's essentially where we're at today.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great point. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, I've got so much business. I'm going to hire another buyer agent or listing agent. And I agree that that isn't necessarily solving the long-term problem, right? It might immediately solve the fact that you don't have to go on all those appointments, but it's still the amount of production that's coming through, and the time killer is doing all the paperwork, right? And making sure that everything's done the right way through compliance and getting it all submitted. So, I agree that your first hire more often than not would be an assistant, an administrative assistant of some sort. Now, it's not 100% the case, but in most cases, most people would say their first hire was some sort of transaction coordinator or administrative person that could handle the paperwork. So when you guys think of that, if you're going to be out building a team or wanting to start a team, what you really need to think about is, if you're the main person right now, what are your strengths? Where are you best used as the best asset for the team, right? And for me, definitely not paperwork. Like I can do my paperwork, but I don't like the detail. I don't like doing that kind of stuff. I'd rather be out talking to people and in front of people. That's the best use of my talents and skills. Whereas Bruce, he can do that. He can be out and talking to people and whatnot, but really his best use skills, talents are that whole back end, the details, the programming, all of that stuff. That's where he is really good, right? So when you're thinking of leveraging yourself and building a team, where are the holes and gaps that you would rather have someone else do because you aren't so great at it or you don't love it, so that you can focus on the things that you do love and that you're really good at, right? So really think about your skill set and where you're going to be best situated on your team. Also keep in mind that when you hire or when you look to make that first hire, it doesn't have to be somebody right here locally in your market, right? Like if you're looking to hire an administrative assistant, you certainly can hire a physical body, but there are a ton of virtual assistants, transaction coordinators that's their business, right? You can just hire them to do your transaction coordinating. So you're not necessarily hiring them as an employee where, now you need to be an employer, right? And everything changes from your status of taxes and things like that. It could just be considered an expense on the books to hire someone who has a transaction coordinating business or a virtual assistant business, or something like that based on what you need, right? The other part of that is you guys don't have to go from 0 to 100, right away. You may decide that I need maybe an administrative assistant for 20 hours a week versus a full-time position, right? Or maybe I need a marketing person for 10 hours a week, or whatever. So, keep that in mind, that it doesn't have to go from you being a solo agent to hiring full-time employees that work for you. Okay. Um, the other thing is it's a mindset thing. A lot of people, and I wish Jennifer was on this call, Jennifer Walsh, she just joined EXP a while, but she is for years, like struggling with, do I hire an admin? Do I not? And it's, if any of us have been in the business long enough, that's a conversation we've had in our head 1,000 times over, right? Do I do it? Do I not do it? And then we get caught up in, well, gosh, if I get a good one, they're going to cost me $40,000 a year or whatever, right? And oh my gosh, I've got to factor in that salary into my expenses for the year. If you can wrap your brain around and change your mindset to, you're really only factoring in that person's salary for, let's just say, a quarter, right? You're going to give them 3 months to make sure we get them up and running, that they're doing what they're supposed to do, that they're actually helping you with a good return on that investment, right? Are they picking up everything quickly and able to take things off your plate so that now you're able to go out and get a couple more sales? That's how you're supposed to be gauging that investment of hiring somebody, right? And if they're not a good fit or it's not working out, be quick to fire, right? I mean, slow to hire, quick to fire. So just keep the mindset of, my investment is only a quarter of what that salary is, because I can always let them go if this isn't working out, right? So as long as they're giving you a good return on investment for hiring them, then you can keep them on, right? You're just covering that quarterly salary. So if it's going to cost you, whatever, $10,000-$15,000 for the quarter, were you able to get a couple extra sales because they leveraged your time, right? Then you're covering that person's salary. Does that make sense?
And
Anybody? Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Was somebody else going on?
No, but I was just gonna say, has
Okay.
anybody had that conversation in their brain?
So I just want to add a couple of things to what Kelly said. You can the process of expanding your team has gotten so much easier. It's so much easier today than it was 5 years ago with virtual assistants and AI. Just so those two things make it 80% easier, right? And you can, if you have this vision of a team, you can go out and you can get a VA for $6 an hour. And these people are absolutely, you can hire as somebody that's absolutely targeted to doing your accounting, to doing your marketing, to doing your videos, to writing your scripts, to doing whatever, to be your transaction coordinator, right? So like Kelly said, you kind of, and you know what you're going to pay them right out of the gate, right? So you know what the cost is to build that team. When you do that, and getting back to what Kelly said, when you make that hire, you might not right out of the gate know whether they're doing a good job or not, even if it's after 6 months. And I say that from the standpoint that when you take some stuff and you get it off your plate and you have somebody else do it, it frees up your time, like Kelly, to go out and get more deals. And you might see a spike in your business right away, right? That spike may not be attributed to the person that you hired. It may be attributed to the fact that you just freed up more of your time, right? So as you go on and as you get busier, then more work gets put on these other people, on the VAs, and you start seeing maybe after 6 months how they're doing. So it might not be a quick thing, like if you're going spending money on marketing that's supposed to be very targeted. You might have a quicker idea of whether it's working or not, but the people thing is a little bit different. And I think that, even though it's easier to form a team with stuff like that, I think it works in the long haul. I think it's just a little longer to be able to figure out if these people are actually the right people for you, because I think freeing up a lot of your time to be able to go out and get the business spikes your business right out of the gate.
Well, but you also, if you hire somebody, whether it's virtually or whatever, and now you have free time, the whole point of that is then for you to go out and do more business, not to go like, hey, cool, I got more free time, I'm going out on the golf course, right? I'm gonna golf more. I mean, unless that's your goal, right? But bottom line is you're adding an expense, but you're not adding to your bottom line with additional sales. So just remember, if you're leveraging your time with people, that's because you're wanting to leverage your time to do what you do best, which in our case, most of us are, the salespeople here, right? So we got to get out and get more sales. So
I also want to, real quick, Cal, I also want to let people know that if you're an individual agent, you could also technically, based on what Kelly was saying, be your own team, right? Only from the standpoint that you can go out and you can leverage your lenders, you can leverage your title people. Without hiring somebody, you can leverage AI, right, to be able to do a lot of the stuff that individual agents have had to do and have taken up a lot of their time before. So there are products and applications out there that also help you save time before you go spend money on a physical person to be able to help you take additional time off of your plate.
Cool. All All right. Well, let's talk about, we just talked about why you might want to start a team. Obviously, you're at a point, your production's high, or you just don't have enough hours in the day, or maybe life has changed, right? Now your kids are getting busier, you're getting more involved with family. You just, things have changed, right? That might be the catalyst for wanting to have the team. So where do you start? We talked about most people will um, start with an administrative person, a virtual assistant, or a transaction coordinator before adding a buyer's agent or a listing specialist. If you guys are on a team as a buyer's agent or a listing specialist, the one piece of advice I will give you, and this is coming from someone who has built a team, has seen people come and go. When we hire most good agents who are going to be building a team, their goal is to hire you knowing that someday you are going to go off on your own. You've become successful. You've kind of mastered working with buyers. Hopefully you've mastered working with listings, and now you're ready to just go out on your own. That's what we want for you, right? If you're a good team leader, that's what we want. And we know eventually that's kind of the progression, right? Um, it 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 does suck because when you get good people, right, they're good on your team, but you do want the best for them. And that's kind of, like I said, the normal progression. The problem that I see and that I would be mindful of, and sometimes we can't avoid it, and Bob will chime in on this too, is that we get someone in and you have a few successes, right? Let's say you hire a buyer's agent, they have a few successes, they get a little big for their britches, so to speak, and now they want to just get out there and do it, right? And unfortunately, and that's fine if they really are doers and they're going to work hard and do it. But what happens is they're not realizing that that support and collaboration that Lisa was talking about earlier that came from the team that maybe provided some of those initial successes was because you were in that team environment, right? It certainly comes from your hard work and what you do as well, but more than likely came from that team environment. And in our case, we had early on some agents that came on, had those successes, and then said, hey, I owe it to myself to get out there and do it myself. And I'm like, you've been on a team for less than 6 months. What we want for you to do is to really understand the business, really understand being a buyer's agent, really understand being a listing specialist. Once you've kind of mastered those things, then get out there and go do it, right? But don't take a few quick successes as I've got this, because this is a crazy difficult business. I don't care what anybody says, right? It's, what do we say? It's easy, not difficult, or something, or no, it's hard, not difficult, or something. I don't know what the saying is, but it's not rocket science what we do. However, every client is different. Every situation is different. Lawsuits happen, changes in paperwork happen, right? Being legally responsible for one of the largest transactions in someone's life is a big deal, right? And so just because you closed your first deal or your first two or three may not necessarily mean you're ready to just get out there and be successful in your career if you don't have some basic let's see, motivators, right? Some drive, some initiative yourself, right? It's not that easy. So anybody experience that on their own? Like, okay, I tried it on my own, that didn't work. Now I'm coming on a team, or I was on a team and then I went on my own. Anybody? Lisa?
I did. I started on a team and then went out on my own and got big enough on my own that I actually had to hire an assistant. But again, me knowing that I'm coming back to real estate, and some of the people on the call may not know that, after a pause and certainly several years and technology and everything, I just knew that I needed to find that support system that was going to be there to help guide me to be a success again.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, that's, you can't put a dollar amount on that. So
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a team member for the rest of your life, right? Sometimes that's an environment that people thrive in, right? I don't want to do it all. I just really like working with buyers, or I don't like working with buyers. I only want to work with sellers. And you can be a dynamic asset to any team, and you just have to do you, right? If you want to eventually go out and do your own and then go build your own team, great. If you don't, like, I'm getting older, right? Maybe I don't really want to do the whole thing. I like just being on a team and kind of, doing what I do best. And I don't want to have to manage other people and do all of that stuff, right? So you have to ask yourself, what am I looking for out of my career? Where will I best serve my clients? How will I best serve my clients? And what type of support and resources do I need to do that successfully, right? And sometimes it's just your brokerage providing those things. Sometimes it's a community like this, masterminding, and they provide you with resources and whatnot. And sometimes it's your team. So I love that, Lisa. I love that you've kind of done both and you've come full circle here. So let's talk a little bit about team structures. So there is no one way to skin this cat, right? There's so many, and there's going to be probably many more structures that pop up over the next 5 years, 6 years, who knows, with all the changes in real estate, right? And I'll start with, you with EXP. Now, this is just with EXP, but I don't think you certainly could do this elsewhere, right? If your broker allows it. But one of the benefits of EXP, and when we were with Keller, was that they recognized a domestic team, right? So if you're husband and wife, or your partners, right, that are married, and you're both real estate agents, you can be what's called a domestic team. And what's nice for that is Bruce and I have one cap. We don't pay two individual caps, right? And so because we're married, that income is, both of our incomes are tied to real estate. They only charge us one cap going in, right? So that's nice. And so even though Bruce really functions more like the administrative side of our business, that doesn't mean every domestic partnership or domestic team works like that. That's just how ours works. Bruce, what other benefits would there be for this domestic, like being a domestic team, that you would maybe want to check with your broker if you're not with EXP?
So for us, it's being treated like one
person.
agent, right? And that's where the one cap comes in. With EXP, we do have separate technology fees a month. Mine happens to be reduced. But so check with that. I would just lump fees all together if you're just looking to talk to your broker and just say, hey, what, A, do you have this available? And B, what are the parameters that you have to fall under moving forward to be able to do that, right? The benefit, like Kelly said, is if I didn't do the marketing and the back end and the transaction coordination from contract to close and things like that, and I just wanted to sell all the time like her, the two of us could go out and sell, and we could have a transaction coordinator, and we could be treated as one agent, right? Now, some people would say, okay, egos might get in the way, and here's the downfall of that, is that when we cap, we cap once. When we icon once. We're recognized as a team and never as individuals, which for
Right.
us,
And all the production goes under
one of
like
us.
one.
Yeah.
So
So that's, for me, that's just super easy to keep track of, because it's just like keeping track of one thing.
Right.
So yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
would do.
Right, but some people might look at that as a negative, right? Like if like Bruce said, if egos get in the way, if someone's like, well, gosh, I'm half that team, Kelly, I closed more deals, but we put all the production under your name, you know, so sad, too bad, Bruce. You look like you're doing nothing, right? And I look like I'm doing everything. So, if your domestic partnership can't handle that, then yeah, that might be the problem. But otherwise, it works really nice. And what I think is they just don't want to penalize one single family with two caps two sets of fees. It's just from a financial hardship standpoint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a domestic partnership. So when we look, I think most of us are on EXP here, but when we look at our production or the leadership roles, those don't usually come up. You have to kind of search for domestic teams and where you fit amongst. It's hard for us to compete with like larger teams like Bob's team. So it's kind of nice that EXP separates the domestic teams aside from the regular teams. So next team structure would be what we would just call a standard team, right? So a lead agent starts, or a Bob and Jennifer Snyder start their team, and they decide they need to build leverage through more people. So Bob, talk about a standard team structure.
Can you guys hear me okay? My internet seems to be a little unstable. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in a can, but we can still hear you. It's not cutting in and out.
Okay, I don't know why I got this amplifier and all this fancy stuff over here, but for whatever reason, whatever. All right, so yeah, so we are, we're running a team of about 12 agents right now. We're a mega team within EXP Realty, and what happens with a mega team is if you qualify, there's some production standards in place. I won't get into the details of the production standards, but essentially what it allows you to do is the team leader is charged with your typical $16,000 cap with EXP. And then the team members have the luxury of then having a $4,000 cap. So what's great about that is it allows our team to cap really quickly. And then, kind of get through that process moving forward, and then they get on their traditional team splits that they have. So we have different split structures for different types of deals that are taking place, whether it be sphere generated from the team agent, which they would get more on, or if it's lead generated by the team. Those splits are, there's more that comes back to the company because a lot of times those leads are paid for, or there's some opportunity costs. Those could have been taken, but we decided to deliver those to our team members. And what we do is we provide a variety of support services, like Lisa mentioned earlier. So our team has full transaction coordination, full listing input and coordination. So really, our agents just need to focus on generating business, and we can get into kind of how our teams may be a little bit different, but we also allow our members of our team to kind of market themselves as themselves and not so much to the team in a lot of that aspect, because as being a team leader now for over 20 years, I know that's really important for the agents to have some identity and working specifically with their database and their sphere and their contacts. So essentially that's how our team is set up. We have done some syndicate pieces as well to our team, but that's a whole nother structure we can talk about. But essentially what that is bringing in agents to the team, but we're just essentially cost sharing, and they are keeping their full cap of $16,000 with EXP.
Awesome. I think that when you think of a standard team, there is no one way to do it. I think the key identifiers are you usually have a team lead that's paying in a full cap to the company, or the full amount, and then there are team members that are paying a split to the team and to the broker, right? The broker's still getting a piece of that, but those team members just have a smaller cap, right? They're not paying into the company that full amount that the team lead would, right? And that's why the team lead is also collecting a split from those team members, because they're providing, a lot of the administrative help, or the technology, or the things like that, right? The organizational side of the business. They're providing resources that the team benefits from. The team lead is also probably doing some training or coaching or hosting meetings or doing whatever, for those team members. And so that's why generally they will collect a split from that team member. a much smaller, obviously split. And then the team member keeps a little bit less than what the team lead would. So that's kind of a standard team. Now, there are many different ways, as Bob talked about, that you can organize your own team and what type of split. You obviously want to check with your broker. Your broker may have some requirements as to if you're going to have a team member, you as the team lead have to collect a certain amount from them as far as your team split. So they may have some requirements on that. If they're in a cap situation, not every brokerage has caps or anything like that, so it can be very different from broker to broker. So you want to check with them first. But just know there is no cut and dry answer, right? Like Bob said, we've got different splits based on the lead that, or the transaction, where it came from. We have teams out there that have team members that are on different splits based on how long they've been with the team, right? What their production level has been with the team. There are teams that have members that are paying in a split, but also have a team member that's super good, wants to be on the team for the collaborative side, but they want to be their own agent and they're paying in a full cap. So there's lots of different ways to build a team. It's just, how do you want to do it? What do you need as the team lead from an expense standpoint? What type of split will help you cover your costs and your time while you're helping to train and facilitate and help your team members. Okay. There is another type of team structure out there called at least through EXP, and could be called something different with other brokerages, called a self-organized team. And that's kind of what Bob was indicating when he said a syndicated team. This type of a team structure is basically saying, hey, if all of us on this call, we all wanted to be on a team, and we want to benefit by having a brand, a unified brand. So it looks like we're everywhere. People are seeing our brand everywhere. But we're all individual agents, right? We're all paying in that full cap to our company. We all have our own expenses. We can, have our own administrative person if we want. But we're not splitting commissions with anyone else on this team. You do you pay into EXP, towards your cap. I do mine, I pay into EXP towards my cap. But we're benefiting by being one big unified brand. We collaborate, we probably help train each other, kind of do masterminds like this, but we are just building a massive brand, which looks like we are one, huge team. Right. So there's an agent with EXP. I think I might have brought this up on another team. Her name's Elizabeth Riley. She's a huge agent. They work on a self-organized team. It's called the Lux Group. And so, they're all over. They're in, I think, many states as well. So, it looks like, wow, they're huge, but they're all doing their own thing, but they're just a self-organized group. Does that make sense? Awesome. So there are probably other ways. Angela, I don't know if you're actually listening, or maybe you're not at this moment, but if you know of any other structures that you want to share, I'd love to hear it. Or if anybody else knows of any team structures they want to share.
Unmute. Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I didn't had to acknowledge that it was being recorded. No, I think as far as EXP, we hit all the team models. And, I was just going to go back to, when you want to start a team, obviously having just worked with agents for so many years, I think one of the pitfalls that they have, if you are considering to leverage with assistance support, is hiring properly. And so Kelly, I know you're versed on this, Bruce, you are. I just did a coaching call with a team lead who is hiring an admin, and we literally spent an hour validating her DISC assessment. So really understanding the behavioral style of your person that you want to bring on to leverage to ensure that it matches the job description. Otherwise, you're just going to have someone that comes in and gets burnt out and isn't going to work for you, which is just going to cost you a lot of time and money and training and whatnot. So that would just be one point I'd make in building your team, is taking the appropriate steps to hire properly.
Right. Like we said, slow to hire, quick to fire, right? Because it's costly, you guys. It's costly to bring somebody on. Your time and training, getting them used to the systems. I mean, it takes a lot. And then if you find out, like Angela said, their disc personality profile doesn't even match someone who would be very successful in an administrative role, you've just wasted a lot of time, right? Ultimately they're probably best suited to be in sales or whatever, right? So knowing the profile of who you need to hire, whether it is a salesperson or administrative person, and really taking your time in hiring that person. Not only do you want them to be a good fit for the position, but they also have to be a good fit for you. Trust your gut, right? There's so many times people can interview really well. Don't just do one interview, have a couple interviews, and Angela probably would be a great resource in terms of other things that you can do through the interview process, to really dig deep and make sure that this person might be a good fit. So, if you're thinking of hiring, get some good advice in regards to that hiring process. So
I think that also brings up a really good point about, the team leader or the person or people deciding that they want to go out and expand their footprint. It's not the way of the world 5, 10, 15 years ago where you did go on a gut feeling. I go out and I meet Asha, and Asha and I hit it off, and yeah, you want to be on my team? Great. It's more of you have to dig into people. You have to do the disc assessment, not only to find out if they're applying for the right position, right? But the disc assessment will also tell you how to talk to these people. Where their mentality is, where their focus is, right? And it helps you in the communication as well. And as far as just one interview or two interviews, I'm a firm believer that it's not a one and done, right? I owned a car dealership, and when I hired, it was unfortunately the industry at that point in time was a revolving door, and you really couldn't do anything. I mean, it was either yes, bring them on, see how they do, or they're going to walk down the street and get a job at the same, doing whatever. And if you needed warm bodies, you needed warm bodies. But you can't do that nowadays because there's too much cost involved. And Bob will attest to this,
ability.
that you bring somebody on and it's not free. Your time's not free. Your expenses are not free to try to train them. And the longer you keep them, the more money you invest. And man, none of us want to go 6 months and be the hand raiser and say, you know what, I made a mistake, or we made a mistake, right? But that you have to be able to do that, not only to limit your liability, but to be able to move on and build your team. Otherwise, you're going backwards.
Right. Right. And there's programs out there, you guys, like when we were with Keller, we did Recruit Select. I'm sure EXP has some, and there's some obviously independent companies and coaches that have programs, to take you down the how to hire road. So certainly if you're at that point, you probably want to invest in maybe becoming better at that process. So anything else, Bob, you wanted to add to like your team, or like you said, you wanted to maybe dig a little deeper into kind of setting that up or the structure of it?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to kind of the hiring aspect of it too. We've been doing this a long time, and we've no doubt had a lot of turnover. A lot of these roles and whatnot are, you try to make them as longer term as possible, but there's since COVID, there's been a huge cultural change as far as what people's expectations are, as far as work from home initiatives, working in the office, and figuring all that out. So I know, like for us, we continue to kind of work through that, and we kind of struggle through it. You can hit the disc assessment, and this person can be the right person for you as far as you think, and then what you have them for sometimes 5 or 6 years, or sometimes you have them for 5 or 6 months. It's just one of those, as much you can go until you're blue in the face, try to figure out how to hire people, but you're never really going to figure it out, especially in this industry where there's a lot of burnout, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of things going on. So what I would say to that aspiring team leader is be ready to have turnaround, be ready to have turbulence and whatever it is that you're dealing with. I mean, you just have to be ready to pivot and shift. So when you do have your people there, make sure that they are processing and creating a environment so when they leave, somebody else can easily step in. That's kind of the key piece, you know. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. But yeah, as far as team structures go, I've seen a lot of different. Sorry, I had a little internet connection in my back office, so I just didn't want to interrupt the group because now there's a few people around here. But you know, there's a lot of different ways to structure it. You know, because for instance, in EXP, if you are a quarter capper and you know, you don't have the opportunity to be, for instance, an icon agent, or you don't have the opportunity to do some of those things. So for those agents, specifically the real high producing agents, you know, you're going to negotiate your splits to the point where it almost doesn't make sense for you to have that person on your team. And I've had a couple people like that are no longer with us, but I mean, it was to the point where it's like, sorry, I can't do any more. Maybe it's time for you to go on your own. Or you can do what's called like a syndicate, where they can still be part of the team, leverage resource, still be a full capping agent. You can still exchange leads and have split structures set up for that, but they're still kind of doing their own thing and maintaining that full cap. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I usually will see that for people who are maybe experimenting in different market centers, for instance, where they'll bring in one of the top producers in a maybe a smaller town or what have you, and there'll be a syndicate to like the Snyder team or whomever, and leverage some of our transaction coordination services, leverage some of the admin, team support, listing input, that sort of thing. We've looked at that. We haven't done anything with it, but it is pretty intriguing.
Well, you have your group up in Vermilion, don't you?
Yeah, but they're part of our mega team. So she's
Okay.
she's a quarter capper. Yeah, but essentially we could do that and replicate that and do it more on a syndicate versus a quarter capping mega team agent, you know. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. Like we were talking about the Lux group down in Dallas, right? So that's what they do. Everybody's pretty much what they're doing is resource sharing. They're resource sharing. You know, they're a group, you know, they're a group of people collaborating with one another, resource sharing, but they're still very much individual, you know, as that goes.
And I think, you know, also something to think about, like if your plan is that you want, or your vision is that you want to grow this large team and kind of syndicate out to different areas, you know, think about that when you're thinking of your team name, right? Like the Lux Group, it's not Elizabeth Riley, you know, whatever, or the Bob Snyder team or Domaille Real Estate, right? So that's also something you have to think about in terms of locally. When I started my team, you know, I wanted people to recognize my name and get to know my name. But now if I wanted to get big and maybe bring someone in down in Florida or Arizona, because the Mayo Clinic here, you know, those are two great places. Well, you know, they don't know me from Adam, and is someone going to want to come work on my team when it's the Kelly DeMail team or DeMail Real Estate, right? So that's also hard too. So I know, you know, you have to take all of those kind of things into consideration too when you're thinking about building a team, and what's the long-term vision of this, and you know, what does that mean for you forming kind of the name or the branding of your team too. So okay. I gotta cut out here. I'm gonna let you guys finish up. I've just got to get to my board meeting. So certainly Bob or Bruce or Lisa, anybody, if you've got any comments about a team or any last minute things, have at it. And thanks, you guys. I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
So Bob, anything else on your team and the structure and how you guys do that?
Well, I think the one thing is there's like a lot of different structures. There's a lot of different, you know, from what you provide from a lead perspective, what you provide from an infrastructure perspective, You know, so I would say the key thing as being you kind of got to figure out, okay, what's my vision? Where do I want to go? Like 5 years, where do I see my business? Do I have 25 agents? Do I have 5 agents? You know, one thing that Jennifer and I always were kind of with was like, we never really wanted to be that 30, 40, 50 agent team group. You know, because to me, it just was too much to look at. I'd rather have 10 to 15, maybe 20 really good producers and work it that way and not build out this huge infrastructure. You know, so it all kind of depends on what you're looking for. And if you are going to be a team leader, what's your value to the agents? You know, because a lot of times team leaders don't really have great value to pitch. You know, well, hey, I just want a team because I got some extra leads I can maybe hand off, but they don't really have anything else on the back end, you know? So you got to have a good, if you're going to do it, you got to have a good mixture of training, technology, leads. You got to have a good mix of everything. So especially when those team members start elevating their production levels, you know, the conversation's coming that, hey, look, I sold 35 homes this year and did, you know, $10 million, $12 million in volume. I'm thinking about going on my own. And I've had those conversations, and Jennifer has as well, where we've been sitting across from that team agent, and we look at it, and we see where their production levels are actually coming from, and 65% of it's coming from team generated leads. Well, if you're going to walk out the door, you're going to have to figure out 65% of your business to get that business back, you know? So, and you got to just really know your numbers as a team leader. You know, that's really what I can share with you in that regard.
Right. But don't you,
but it's not for the, I will say this, it's not for the faint of heart either. I will say it was a lot simpler when it was just Jennifer, myself, and an assistant, you know, but so there's trade there. There's trade-off that takes place.
Yep.
And I enjoy having the team. I enjoy the collaboration aspect of it, as I can speak for Jennifer as well. But it was a lot more simpler that way. But, you know, like I said, there's a trade-off. And we decided we wanted to actually want to trade a little bit of time for commission, you know?
yeah. Don't you think building a team is like a living thing, right? I mean, you have your vision, you have your
Constant.
5-year, maybe 10-year vision,
Constant.
but you can't stick to that, right? So as maybe an individual agent coming on, maybe you find another agent friend that you guys say, hey, you know what? Let's just, we don't even know if we're going to grow, but let's start collaborating, and maybe we do the you know, maybe we do the team structure where we both hire an assistant, right? And we share halvesies, and maybe we even go and use the Snyder team as if we're just starting this out, we use that as our marketing, right? And you start out with 2, and Bob, I got to believe that you didn't just go from, hey, I want a team of maybe 15 to 20 people and figure out your value add to these people right out of the gate, and then go try to find 15 or 20 people.
No.
I'm going to believe that when it was you and Jennifer and an assistant, you guys eventually grew slowly as you got your first 1 or 2 or 3 people on, and then you had conversations with those agents that were getting more production, and, you know, what do you need? And you know, you kind of morphed into this bigger team with a lot more value add for team members, because none of us start that way right out of the gate, I don't think.
Yeah.
That's like the beauty of real estate, though. I mean, like it's like the sky's the limit in how you structure, and it can change. Like you said, it's dynamic. I mean, I've always appreciated that about real estate. You can kind of, there's like literally limitless possibilities on how you could structure your team, your own business. I mean, yeah, anything's kind of possible, which is really cool about
I've
this
always
business.
told Kelly, I said, when I first got into real estate, you know, I looked at real estate as a whole, like a tree, right? So the trunk is the real estate, and all the branches are everything that real estate gives you access to be able to do by holding that real estate license. And, you know, a lot of that is the team. And then you go out on a big branch on the team, and then millions of little small branches. You can do it so many different ways. There's not just one way.
Yeah.
You know, but I absolutely agree with Bob. It's not for the faint of heart. Kelly and I started, and we did make the mistakes. And if you're afraid of making mistakes, don't do this. I will tell you, just you know, don't even rewatch the video, because it's you're afraid of making mistakes, you're not going to be happy, right? We made a lot of hiring mistakes. We made a lot of mistakes in structure, and we tried and we failed, and then we tried again and we failed, and we tried again and had some successes. And then people decided they wanted to have babies and go out on their own, because they were with us for 2 months and they sold a couple of $1 million houses and they thought they had the world by the tail. You know, so things happen, and you have to be able to pivot, and you have to be able to have thick skin, because it's not personal, right? But you have to be able to pivot. And I think from a standpoint of, you know, Bob saying it was a lot easier with him and Jennifer and an assistant, that's where Kelly and I are at, right? It's just the two of us. And we finally looked at each other after, you know, after a number of years of having a team, and just said, you know what, until we get so busy that we just don't have any personal time at all, we're just going to do it, just the two of us, and see how much business we can do. And our business skyrocketed, because we were now just focused on us. And that's, you know, does that happen every time? No. Did that happen in Bob's case? No. You know what? He loves the collaboration with all of his people and all the teammates. So there's so many different ways to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say too, that we were talking about it a little earlier today, as far as, you know, kind of having that battle amongst yourself, as far as, when do I hire my assistant? And what I would tell you is that as soon as you hire your first person who's on your payroll, it gets real fast, because now you have somebody who's relying on you to produce so they can have a livelihood. And then you start doing that X factor, and it's one of those things that, you know, like I said, it's not for the faint of heart. You got to be a risk taker. You can't take it, to your point, you can't take things personal. People are always going to be coming and going. I've had a lot of agents on my team who are no longer with us because they chase shiny objects. They're always chasing leads, you know. Well, that's not a really great way to maintain your business long term, but, you know, there's a lot of bigger teams out there that have shiny objects that they're attracting you into and with. So, you know, it's like I said, it's constant. So you need to be constantly talking to agents. You need to be constantly identifying potential people who could be within your organization from a support perspective, because you never know when you wake up in the morning and you see an email of somebody who's no longer going to be on your team. You got to be ready to backfill that position, and backfill that position not only quickly but effectively, right? So that's where it can be a challenge, absolutely, you know. But it's choices, and it's a choice that we've made, and you know, we live with it. So, and it's worked for us over the last few years. So,
and that, you know, that team member that decides to leave, that they're just telling you, you just got a pay cut. Right. And you're right. You need to backfill that, or figure out how your team is going to stay at the level that it's staying at, because the team needs to be successful for all of the agents in the team or on the team to be successful, right? Because you still need to be able to pay for all of the infrastructure and the training and the transaction coordination and things like that. So yeah, absolutely agree with that. We've got a minute left. Anybody got any questions or last minute comments on the teams?
I'll just give a quick last minute comment. You know, we have to remember team leaders. I have so much respect for team leaders. They're less than 5 percentile of the population out there. So, you know, when you're a team leader, you are one, not only the team leader, but you're a salesperson, you're a business owner, you're a coach, you're a recruiter, you're a visionary, you have the purse strings, you're the marketing. So I say be gentle on your team leaders because they do take a lot on their shoulders. They're amazing humans, not perfect. And on the other side of it, like if you're going to leverage and want to be a team leader, and I used to be a team leader, the way we're wired is we dump on people. It's just a flaw of ours because we move faster than most people as far as from a behavioral style. So communication, consistency, and having a system in place to communicate effectively with whoever it is you hire, where you weekly are going over standards and expectations and opening up that dialogue for what's working, what's not, I would say is very key once you do get someone in place as well. There's my soapbox for today.
That's a great point, Angela. And I think, that's one thing that we always try to be better with, because what happens is when the team's running really good, your weekly meetings now all of a sudden tend to maybe disappear, or it's just the comfort levels there. Typically when you're uncomfortable is when you're making progress, is what I've found as being a team leader. When you're comfortable, you're probably doing fine, but there's not a lot of progress being made. And then as soon as something disrupts that, then you go into reactionary mode and you go into, okay, I got to kick some ass mode and I got to figure this out and I got to figure it out real quick. So I like what you had mentioned there. It's key to kind of keep, it's like an agent prospecting, right? Oh man, I got 10 closings this month. It's great. I'm going to go ahead and take some time off, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden the money's spent, those closings are gone. And then you're having to now prospect 3 times harder than if you would have just kept consistent along the way. And that is definitely a challenge of a team leader, is making sure we're consistently communicating with our support groups, with our agents, to assure everybody's in a good place,
Yep.
And
awesome, everybody. I appreciate that. And it's 10:01. So whoever's got to go, please feel free. We're gonna wrap this up. Thanks everybody for attending.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, thanks, Angela, for all of your professional input. We appreciate you joining us. And next week, Bob, what do we have next week?
I have to defer that to Asha. She would probably have that right at her hands there.
Give me one sec. But I do have it at my fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see.
She's so
September. Oh, it's EXP Explained. I should have known that because that's the last Wednesday of the month.
Oh,
So we're just talking EXP.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I
Time's
know.
flying.
Last
All right.
Wednesday of the month.
All right.
We can talk
Yep,
about
so
all the
that's what it is.
EXP amazing team models that are not
Yeah, there
here.
you
Why
go.
don't join us?
Yeah, exactly. So thanks everybody. We have an EXP Explained next Wednesday. And we look forward to seeing everybody there.
All right. Bye, everybody.
guys.
Bye, Kevin.
Thanks everybody.